The afternoon sun hung low over a quiet suburban street in Ohio, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Officer Daniel Carter was finishing paperwork in his patrol car when he noticed a small figure running toward him. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Her hair was messy, her shoes untied, and tears streamed down her dusty cheeks. She waved her arms desperately, stumbling as she ran. Daniel opened the car door just as she reached him, breathless and shaking. Before he could ask her name, she grabbed his sleeve with both hands and cried, "Please, sir, please follow me home." Daniel knelt to her level, his training kicking in but his heart already uneasy. "Sweetheart, what's your name?" he asked gently. She sniffed hard, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "Emily," she whispered. Her voice trembled as she pointed down the street. "Something's wrong with my mommy. She won't wake up." The words hit Daniel like a punch to the chest. He radioed for backup immediately, but he didn't wait. Taking Emily's small hand, he told her, "I'm right here. Show me the way." They walked quickly through a row of modest houses, Emily tugging him forward as if afraid time was slipping away. She kept glancing up at him, her eyes wide with fear. "I tried to wake her," she said between sobs. "I shook her and called her name, but she didn't answer. I made cereal for my baby brother, but he kept crying." Daniel's jaw tightened. No child should have to carry that weight. As they approached a small, aging house with peeling white paint, Emily stopped at the steps, her grip tightening. "She's inside," she whispered. Daniel entered cautiously, calling out, "Police department." The house was quiet except for the faint cries of a baby coming from somewhere inside. The living room was cluttered but clean, toys scattered across the floor. On the couch lay a woman, still and pale, an empty pill bottle tipped over on the coffee table. Daniel rushed to her side, checking for a pulse. She was breathing, but barely. He radioed urgently for an ambulance, giving the address and situation. Then he moved quickly toward the sound of crying and found a baby in a crib, red-faced and hungry but unharmed. Emily stood frozen in the doorway, watching with terrified eyes. Daniel crouched beside her again. "Your mommy is still breathing," he said softly. "Help is coming." She collapsed into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably, the fear she had held together finally breaking free. Outside, sirens grew louder, filling the air with urgency. Paramedics rushed in moments later, taking over as Daniel stepped back, his uniform damp where Emily's tears had soaked through. As the paramedics worked, one of them quietly told Daniel that the woman had likely overdosed but had a chance if treated quickly. Daniel watched as they lifted her onto a stretcher, oxygen mask in place. Emily clutched his hand tightly as they wheeled her mother out. "Is she going to die?" Emily asked in a small, broken voice. Daniel swallowed hard. "They're doing everything they can," he replied honestly. "You did the bravest thing possible by coming to get help." Child Protective Services arrived shortly after, but Daniel stayed with Emily until a social worker gently took over. The baby was fed and calmed, finally falling asleep. As Emily sat on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket, she stared at the ambulance disappearing down the street. "I thought it was my fault," she whispered. "I thought if I was a better girl, she wouldn't be sick." Daniel's eyes burned. "No, Emily," he said firmly. "None of this is your fault. You saved your mom's life today." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. Emily's words echoed in his mind. He'd seen countless emergencies in his 10 years on the force, but something about that little girl haunted him. The next day, he checked in with the hospital. Emily's mother, Sarah, was alive. She had been struggling silently with depression and addiction after losing her husband 2 years earlier. The overdose hadn't been a suicide attempt, but a dangerous mistake. She asked if the officer who helped her daughter could visit. When Daniel walked into the hospital room, Sarah's eyes filled with tears instantly. "Thank you," she said weakly. "My daughter, she saved me, didn't she?" Daniel nodded. "She did," he replied. Emily sat beside the bed, holding her mother's hand tightly. When she saw Daniel, her face lit up for the first time since that day. "I told you he would help, Mommy," she said proudly. Sarah broke down, squeezing her daughter's hand as if afraid to let go. Over the following weeks, the community rallied around the family. Neighbors organized meal trains, donated clothes, and helped clean the house. Sarah entered a rehabilitation program and began therapy. Emily and her baby brother stayed temporarily with a loving aunt nearby. Daniel checked in often, sometimes bringing coloring books or small toys. Slowly, Emily's fear faded, replaced by cautious smiles. She started doing better in school, her teachers noting her newfound confidence. Months later, on a warm spring morning, Daniel received a letter at the police station. Inside was a crayon drawing of a police officer holding hands with a little girl and a baby. Above it, in shaky letters, were the words, "Thank you for following me home." Daniel sat quietly for a long time, staring at the drawing. In all his years wearing a badge, he had never felt prouder. Not because he saved someone, but because a little girl had trusted him enough to ask for help, and changed lives forever.